In this module, we are going to consider how to work with forms. All right, how to work with forms. So without further ado, let us dive in and see how to work with forms. So we are going to start with getting data from forms. So if I go back to my code here, my code is pretty messy and I'm going to do some cleanup here a little bit. So in our home control, I'm going to remove this thing that I was using for Eloquent and just leave it for now to return the view. And then if I go to my view, let me just go to my view here, to the index. I'm going also to remove this for each because I'm not getting any data from the home controller, so that it doesn't throw any error. And now if I go to the browser and just do a refresh, so in the browser and just do a refresh here, so we are cool, we don't have any error. As you can see, we have our index. So it doesn't matter what you have, because currently we are just going to work with an input form. You can use this input form anywhere in your view just to get data. We're going to see how to get data from this input form. So it doesn't matter what we really have. We are not working on the design of the page. And so if you just have a view, that is good for you to go. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use a bootstrap input form. So I'm going to go to bootstrap here and I'm going to use bootstrap 4. And I'm going just to copy some demi input here, some demi form like this one here. And then I'm going to come inside my guy here, and I'm going to paste this data here. So when you look at this form, we have a form group, we have an email address, and if you go to our database, if I just open up our migration here and migration profile, well, the data that we want is the name, the email, and the age. All right, so that is what I'm going actually to input in our form here. So this first guy is going to be the name, and then the label is going to be name, and then the input should be text like this, and then also the ID, I'll put text and name, and then you also need the name variable, and then I'll just pass name here, and then enter name, something like that. And then down here we have a small, we don't need this for now, so I'm just going to copy this guy. I'm going to replace this other guy here. I'm going to pass here email. We're going to use email, so I'm going to say this should be email. The type is going to be email, and then the name is going to be email, and then the ID is going to be email. The reason why I'm using this name parameter here is because in PHP, when you post data to the request, it will look for this guy name from this input to get the value of the input. So it doesn't look for ID, but rather this name. So you need to have this name parameter here. And the last guy you are going to have here is, so let me just copy this, is going to be the age. So I'm going to paste this guy like this, and I'm going to say this is going to be age, label is going to be age, type will be number, this won't be text, type will be number, and then the name of course will be age again, the ID will be age, and then enter age, this should be enter email. Then I'll move this area describe, this guy here, then I'll also remove this guy here, then I'll also remove this guy here. And what I'm going to do is that I think that is okay. Let us just see in our browser how these things appear. So if I go to the browser and just do a refresh here, okay, it doesn't look pretty bad. It is pretty good for the start. So we have the name, we have the email. So what I can do, let me just add a margin top on this so that at least it can look much better. So I'm going inside here, our form here, and in the first div, I'm going to pass empty for margin top if you're using Bootstrap, and I'm going to say 4. So I'm going to copy this guy. I'm just lazy, let me just paste it here and also paste this here like that and do a refresh here again. Alright, it looks nice. Okay, let me also add a margin top on this button here. Let me just go back. So now button here, I'm going to say class margin top, I'm going to put 4. I'm going to do a refresh here. So far that is good for now. So we have the name, we have the email, and we have the age. And then in order to submit data to the controller, what you need now, we need also to pass an action here, right? And the action will dictate or will show the route where the data should go. In this case, I'll just use let me just do this. I just use our guy here. If you can remember, we have learned about named route, and I'm going to pass our route here. And in this case, our route will be, if I go back to web.php, we have this home route, and we also have this home about route. So what I'm going to do, let me just delete this about, and so that we can remain with home. And in the home, I'm going to create another method. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say this route is going to be submit data, and then for now I can just say it will go to submit data. All right, so this will be the route for submitting that data. All right, and then if I go back to our index guy here, so this will be slash submit dash data. All right, so let me just go back and rename this to be this way. And then if I go, I'm going to create this method now, this submit data inside the home controller. I just come here and say public function submit data. That is our method. Then that is okay for now. So in order to get data, if you're submitting data to this method, you need to use the request parameter. So the request guy is the one who will be able to get the data that you are posting in this route. All right, so I just pass the request there. And then in our web now, this, instead of being a get method, it will be a post method, because we are posting data, we are not getting data. All right, so we are posting data here. So if I go back here, we have our action, and I'm going again to pass the method that we'll be using in this case, which will be the post method. All right, and the last thing that we need to do here is that we need to pass a CSRF. This is just like a unique identifier for the form that help in security issues. So you need to pass this guy here inside the form. So once you have done that, that is okay. And then now if I go to our code now inside our home controller, is that I can be able to get the data that has been passed to this method by saying request, and then just use a method all. This will get everything that comes from the form. All right, and I can be able just to do a DD to see the data that is coming from this form. So if everything goes right, we should be able to see the name, the email, and the age that was passed to this form. All right, so let us go back to our browser here and just do a refresh. So I'm going to pass my name here, Kevin Amai. I'm going to pass an email here, Kevin Amai 20, and age I'm going to pass, let us say 25. Then I'm going to do a submit here. So as you can see now, the submit was okay, and the data that I've just dumped in our method is the one that is being displayed here. So we have the name, the email, the age. And for example, if I go back here and I want to get the name alone, I can just DD and just say name. This should return the name alone from the request. So if I go back here and just do a refresh here, we should have only the name from the request. All right, so we have the name. If you want to get the email, you can just do request email, and then if I go back here and do a refresh, this should return the email. All right, so and if I want to get the age, of course I'll do something like request age. So if I go back here and refresh this guy, you should have the age, so which is 25. And now if you can remember, if we are able now to get this data like this, it is now easy to pass this data to the database. So the database, as you can remember, will just say profile from eloquent model that we just learned. We just say profile. All right, profile, and I just call the create method. All right, the create. Like this, and then inside here I'm going to pass an array, and if you can remember now, I can just say something like, the name here can be equal to the request name. All right, then I can say also that let me just remove this dd so that it can stop showing me this. Then I can say our email here now can be equal to the request email that we'll be getting. All right, and then lastly I can say that our age will be equal to the request age that I'll be getting from the form. So this is okay for now. So anything that I submit from the form will be directly submitted to the database. All right, don't worry with the validation. Now we are going to look at our next lesson, but for now just want you to understand how to get this data from the form and be able to submit it into the database. All right, so now if I go back to the browser and just do a refresh here, let me just go back here and just do a refresh here. And so let me just input some names here and say maybe Dennis Mark, and just say maybe the email should be dennis@gmail.com, and the age maybe to be 45, and then I'll submit this data. So I've submitted the data and it brings me to a blank page, and the reason being is because I'm not doing anything after submitting the data, and that can be easily solved by doing something like this. Once I've submitted the data, I might say return. I want to return the user back to the page where he was, and say redirect, and then do something like this. This will direct the user back to the page which he was. All right, so but first let us go to the database and see if our data is there, and just do a refresh here. As you can see, now we have our data in the database here. So let me just do one more insert and see how this redirect back will work. So let me just go to the browser here and do a refresh again. So I'll input new names. My name, Kevin Amai 20, age, I'll just say 25, and just submit. So as you can see, once I submit the data, it returns me to the same page. That is how you can be able to redirect the user back to the page. Then if I go to our database now, just do a refresh here, my name should appear here. As you can see, we have now my name appear here. That is how you get data from form and be able to submit that data to the database. In this lesson specifically, we are going to look on how to validate form data. All right, let us dive in and see how to do this. And in my code, so far what we are doing is that we are just submitting this data without doing any validation, and which might lead to a lot of issues such as SQL injection and stuff. So, and again, you don't want null data to be submitted where you don't have null values. So in order to validate this data, I'll show you. Laravel comes with very handy method. So the first one is called the validate method. So you just call this method from the request guy, and if you can see, it highlights the validate method here, and inside here you're going to pass an array. All right, so and in this array you're going to specify how your data should be validated. For example, I can say the name. I want the name to be, and then you pass these two quotes. I want the name to be required which means it must be there or it should be provided. It should not be null. And then you pass this pipe, this pipe that is used for OR statement required. And then maybe you want the max or the length of this variable to be, you can say maybe 255. That is how you do it. Then we can have the email. Let me just put a comma here. And then the email also can be required. The max can be a length of 255. But for the email also, I can say I want this to be unique, all right? I want the email to be unique, and I want the email to be unique in which table? The table is profile, all right? And then lastly, I can actually also say that the age should be also required. Alright, and I want this to be an integer. Note, I don't want someone to submit a string. Let us say a minimum of 10. Alright, this is just an example to help you understand how validation works. So anytime I submit a data, it will check whether the data submitted meets the requirements that I've declared or are defined in this validate method. And if that is not shown, then it will throw an error. So I need a means to catch this error and display this error to the user. And that is where now again errors come in. So here what I need to check is that I need to check using the if. If you can remember, we did talk about the if add directive. I need to check if any error, so I just say errors and these errors like this. If there is any error, all right, if there is any error, then do something. In fact, I need to end if first. So if there is any error, I can just use a div alert, all right, a div class, and this is alert, and then this should be alert dash danger, all right. So I can use div alert here and say, let me just close this here, and inside here I can just use an UL, and inside I can have an LI like this. So I will want here for each of this error, for so I just say errors and all errors, or all right, as error. So for each of this error, I want to get every single error, right? We can end this for each here and just say for each of this error we'll display this error inside here. And so we'll have our error displayed here, and that is it. So I'm checking here if there is any error. This is how you catch errors in Laravel, and you can just use this alert danger. Alert is just a bootstrap element, a bootstrap component to show an alert, and then I look through these errors, and for each of these error I want to display these errors in a list, all right? And this list of course will be an alert danger, a red in color, that is. So let us try this and see. So I'll go back to my browser here. So back to our guy here, our form. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going just to try and submit this data here without any validation and see what it will give us. As you can see, when I submit this data without anything, it tells me the name field is required, the email field is required, and the age field is required. That is because of the for each alert that we have added in our form here. And then let us say, for example, I submit just this the name and the email, and I leave alone the age. Then just do a submit here. As you can see, it tells me that the age field is required. All right. When I go to my database, Kevin Amai 20. All right. Let us try again. Yeah, email. I'm going to use this email here. And I'm going to put age something like 56, and then do a submit here. So this one has been submitted successfully, and if I go to the database here and do a refresh here, so you can see we have two records now, care at MedSync and this other Epren. So let me just try to use this same email here, this Epren at Gmail. So what I'm going to do here is that if I pass my name here and I repeat the same here. So I'm repeating this email intentionally so that you can see the error that it will throw here. And then I try to submit this data now. This should throw an error that the email should be unique. Why? Because we already have such an email in the database. As you can see, the error that is thrown here is that the email has already been taken. But one of the things that I don't like with this approach here is that, or something that we have left out, is that anytime I submit the data and there is an error, and then I have to input this all data all again, which is not a good practice. So what I need to do here is that I need to maintain the data that was here when the form was submitted, whether there was an error or there wasn't an error, so that when the user goes back to this form, he can be able just to edit the data that was there in the form. And the way to do this is very simple. So let us go back to our code here, and you see here in our form, in these input values here, so I need to say that the value here it should always be to the former value that was here, and you just use this guy by the name old. Then you pass the name of this field, which is name in this case. Then I just copy this guy and just paste him here. This should be now be email, and our last guy here should be the age. All right, so I just do something like this, then go back to our browser here, just do a refresh. So now here is that when I submit my name now here, and let me just submit an email that exists like this one here, and the age, let me just say something like this. So of course this will throw an error, but at least we'll still have the data that is in the form here. So if I do submit here, as you can see, it has thrown an error, but we still have this data in the form. So this is one of the good practice that you can implement just to improve the user experience. All right, so that is how you validate your data before going into submitting the data to the database. And there are quite a number of the validation that you can be able to do. You can be able also to validate images, and just check it out, and you can be able to know how to validate more complex data. In this lesson, you're going to consider how to send responses to form. All right, how to send responses to form. So without further ado, let us dive in and see how to do this. So far, we have seen how to submit data through forms to our database. We have seen how to validate this data and how to show errors. But we haven't seen, for example, if there is the data has been submitted successfully, and you want to give responses to user, then how can you be able to do this? This is quite simple. One thing you can be able to do, you can just use this request guy and call, there's a guy by the name session, a session method, and then here you can call a method by the name flash. All right, this should be flash. Is it flash with you? Okay, let us try this and see. So this flash method will take a key. So for example, I can just say message, and the message for this, okay, this I think should be flash with an a like this. So it will take a key, and then we'll take the message. For example, here I can see registration was successful, something like that. So that is okay. And then if I go to our code here, so if there is any error, I want to show this message, and then down here I can just say again, and if, let me just end if here, and then here I can do is that session, I can check if it has a guy by the name message. All right, then I want to do what I want to do here is to display I want to display an alert again here, and this alert will be, of course, based on our message here like this. So here I can just say I just use guy session like this, and use the guy get here, and inside this get I can just pass the guy message. So that is how I can be able to get the message that has been passed in this session. Also here Okay, this is fine, but I can do something like this again here. Session, something like this. It will do the same thing. So if I go back to the browser here and just do a refresh again here, so I'm going to pass a new name here. Let us call this Mark Twain. Email should be mark@gmail.com. The age should be 67, and then submit this. So it tells me registration was successful, but I haven't add an alert here. Forgot to add an alert here. So let me just say class, and I'll just say alert, and I put this to be alert success. Alert success, like this guy here. So that is fine. Let me go back and do a refresh here, and then I'll just add a new guy here. I'll just say let us say John Mark, and the email here instead will be john@gmail.com. The age should be something like 78. Then submit this guy. So now, as you can see, now we have this label here. Registration was successful. So that is how you can be able to send a response back to the user, just to confirm that the action that he has performed is either was successful. All right. So if I go back to my home controller here, so this guy again, you can substitute this guy with something like this. Just do like this. This will just do the same thing. Either you use this quest guy here and call the session guy here, and then call the flash guy here, or either you use this guy here. This will just perform the same thing. So that is how you send a response once an action was successful done, or data was successfully inserted into the database. All right.